Then we'll get started. Alan, you're here. Ooh, excellent. Cool. Hey. Right, we'll get started. So today's DigiShift is specifically about health charities and digital service delivery. So we've got three exciting speakers today. So we've got Janine Rennie from Wellbeing Scotland, Carmen Papachu-Dutu. I work in the same office as you, Carmen, so I do apologise if I can't pronounce your second name properly, and like we've worked next to each other for so long, it's pretty pathetic if I can't, so I'm very sorry from the lines. And Alan Cowie from Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland. Carmen, did I pronounce it in any kind of reasonable way?
That's all right, no one can really pronounce it.
Well, okay, fair enough.
But that's fine.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for letting me off with it. John and I have not intentionally dressed the same today. This is just pure coincidence, by the way. So just in case you're wondering, this is not.
We're celebrating phase 2.
Yeah, we're celebrating phase 2. Yeah, it was getting to use another person's toilet. This is how we're celebrating. John, do you want to save me from saying anything more ridiculous stuff? I would talk a wee bit about some of the work that SCV are doing at the moment.
Of course, yeah. So welcome everyone. Great to see you. It'll be a really interesting discussion today. So SCV are working with Third Sector Lab on all kinds of digital support for charities. So these calls are one important part of that, where we have these conversations and learn what other charities are doing. What we also do is put a lot of materials and resources on our website. So we'll just pop a link into chat. You can look at in-depth how-to guides. You can also book brief one-to-one support with us if you want to make progress on your digital journey. And the other thing to note is some but not all of our sessions that we run on DigiShift are recorded into a podcast, and that's available. It's called DigiListen, and it's available on Spotify and iTunes and other podcast platforms. It's definitely worth a listen. I should just mention that we are recording today. That will be available as a video on our YouTube channel later on. So if you don't want to be visible, you can switch your camera off if you wish to. What we'll do, as always, with discussion is we'll hear from the speakers and then just use the chat box to send questions in or queries, and then we'll keep an eye on that. And I would expect today we'll definitely have time for quite a lot of Q&A once we've heard from the speakers at the beginning. And I think, Ross, is it worth mentioning about the Curve training as well?
Yeah, so we've got some free training that's coming up. So that's been supported by the Alliance, SCVO, RS McDonald Charitable Trust, and also the Catalyst. So we'll put a link to that in the chat box. But you can book that, so it's free 90-minute training, and we've got quite a wide range of kind of digital skills workshops coming up. The first one is on Monday, and it's open to anyone who works in a charity. So if you've got colleagues who might want to attend, then you can send the link on. I'll just get the link for that just now, and I will put it in the chat.
I popped it in already.
Oh, you popped it in. You're much faster than me. Jen, who I work with, usually does all these things, but she's not in the chat yet. She's been running late, so she will join us at some point. The other thing to say is there's, as well as all the resources that sit on the SCVO site, we've got quite a big Google document which has now got tons and tons of resources. There is a specific healthcare and also a mental health section in that. So when we share the link to that document in the chat box, when you click through and you go to the health or the mental health section, you'll be able to see a lot of the kind of case studies and best practice around digital service delivery. So there's loads of really good examples from other organisations in there that you can go away and have a look at. So we'll hear from our first speaker. It's the first time we've been joined by a parrot, which is amazing. So we're going to hear from Janine Rennie, who works for Wellbeing Scotland. And yeah, we've got a parrot on the call. I'm excited. I'm easily amused, clearly.
Yeah, well, I'm just really hoping the parrot doesn't join in, because as I said, she uses quite choice language occasionally. So apologies if she does speak. Hopefully that she won't be motivated by what I'm saying. So I just wanted to cover a wee bit about what's been happening for Wellbeing Scotland since we've had the lockdown, and also a bit about the effect on our clients, but also where we're going to move after all of this. So when lockdown happened, we moved very quickly onto an online and telephone support system. So we set up a digital switchboard with all our admin team so that the helpline was coming into a switchboard that could then allocate the calls out specifically straight away to counsellors. And to enable us to do that, what we did is we had all of our counsellors give availability spreadsheets, which was a huge piece of work because we have 25 counsellors who are working actively as staff members, but we also have 69 counselling volunteers and 31 befriending volunteers. So that was a huge piece of work to pull all that together and to see who could be referred to at each time. So that's all in place now and is working really, really well. We publicised our helplines widely in a lot of different community locations so people could see what we were actually doing. And we purchased Zoom Pro to ensure that we were able to have more than 2 people on a call at any time so that we could then deliver training, we could have staff meetings, that kind of thing. So we got all that out in place. A lot of the clients were a wee bit nervous about Zoom because they'd heard all the horror stories. So we've looked at a number of platforms, and also in the work that we do with schools, they've not been entirely happy with Zoom because they've heard the horror stories too. So so far we've used Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, WhatsApp, Whereby, and Google Classroom. So these are some of the different packages we've been using, and we like Zoom the best. So we've actually increased the safety of Zoom as most people have by putting in a waiting room and a password so that when people join, it's people that we know that are joining. The clients are actually really benefiting from the online and the telephone support. They're telling us they think this is way better in a lot of ways than face-to-face, because a lot of them were really socially anxious. They didn't want to leave the house. They didn't like getting public transport. Often public transport was sporadic. A lot of them had major health issues. A lot of our clients have got significant disability issues. So they've said that they actually really benefit from being able to offer online support. And I know there's a lot of discussion about, well, we should be getting our clients not to be socially isolated and get back out there. My view on that is that that's not what counselling's about. Counselling isn't about getting people back out the house. So our role is to get people resilient in a number of different ways. So our role isn't to get people to go outdoors. So if it's safer for somebody to actually do that first piece of work online, then that's absolutely fine as far as I'm concerned, because it gets them stable enough to then be able to get out of the house. And we find that after you've maybe done a course of therapy, people do actually feel okay to go out. But if we're saying, no, we insist that you come along at 5 o'clock on a Wednesday because that's what we need you to do, then quite often they'll just not engage. So this has given us a way in that's actually really safe for a lot of clients. And what we've found is that a lot of clients actually are not even happy with talking on the telephone or on online, and they might want to do email support to begin with. So even just that gentle emailing back and forth can be really helpful for a lot of people before they engage. So it's important to note as well that a lot of people are currently not accessing their GP for a range of reasons. And that could be they don't want to bother their GP because COVID's going on. They're frightened to go to their GP because of any risk of infection, or for a significant number, they've made contact about their mental health and they've been told that waiting lists are closed and that the waiting list won't open up again until after COVID. And even then it's likely to be an 18-month waiting list. So people are really not engaging with the NHS for a number of different reasons. So the voluntary sector is pretty much plugging a lot of those gaps at the moment. And people who are really anxious about making contact with the health professionals, they feel that the voluntary sector is an area where they feel more confident to do so. And that's great because it means people are actually feeling that we're approachable and they're able to come to us. They're also looking at us for, support with advocacy, so that if they're not able to access their basic needs like food, we're able to advocate on their behalf and work with other specialist agencies who are providing food initiatives to work together to make sure that people are getting the support that they need. We've seen a huge increase in our workload. A lot of our clients come to us because of childhood trauma or adverse childhood experiences, and we're finding that people are being significantly re-traumatised at the moment with everything that's going on. Some of them are receiving letters really to say that DNR letters do not resuscitate, and some are getting really concerned and upset about that. So, they're coming forward to support maybe for the first time. Our other clients are maybe 3 or 4 times a week, where before they were only once a week. And we're seeing a lot of clients who are talking a lot about suicide who weren't before. So we've had a number of emergency interventions where we've had to phone the GP on their behalf to ensure that they're safe. So much of our work in schools has been moved to online and by phone, and there's significant digital poverty, and there's a lot of initiatives now to try and address that. So that's something we need to look at as a whole sector going forward, and ensuring that people have access to the equipment that they need. Because this isn't just going to go on overnight. I mean, Ross was just talking about we can now use somebody's toilet. That doesn't mean we're going to be able to get back into reality, because we got a notification from our insurance company about what we need to put in place to enable us to go back to face-to-face. And I think we'll be waiting the next 5 years to get that in place the way it's kind of going. So we need to look at that. So we've been offering a lot of online virtual groups, whether it be quiz nights, whether it be online arts and crafts. We just get funding from Tesco to buy equipment. So we're going to go around and deliver this equipment to all the people that we work with. And we're going to do virtual art classes online, which will be really fun to do. So we're really looking forward to that. A lot of peer support's been happening. So some of the challenges have been paperwork online. So if somebody can come up with a really great paperwork system online for completing client consent forms, that would be really helpful, because that's a struggle for all of us, because we have to get consent when we're working with MD to gather their information. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And you know, we've got email addresses for all our volunteers to make sure that they can use a lot of the packages that they need to use safely without using their own numbers. For the wellbeing of our staff, that's been incredibly important. So we've been having weekly meetings and meetings as and when staff require it. And we're having a wellbeing session for all staff very, very soon. We've been offering wellbeing sessions to other agencies if they want that. So far I've delivered a couple of sessions to carer organisations and schools, some of the school support staff. So we can do that on mental wellbeing, and that's free of charge to partner agencies. So we're doing a lot of that just now, just to make sure that everybody that's working in the field is feeling okay as well, and they're not really struggling. Our board are meeting monthly. So ultimately, COVID's been a huge challenge, but also very positive, because we found that people who couldn't engage before are now engaging. And we're seeing more and more people. We're able to do much more. This stuff I absolutely love. I'm meeting all these new people that I hadn't met before, and I would not have had time to do it in real terms. I cover Scotland, so I wouldn't have been able to do all the different meetings, whereas I can shoot up to Fife and then 2 minutes later shoot down to Renfrewshire. So it's absolutely brilliant from that point of view. And we really feel that online events and conferences and training should continue, because we're all really, really busy. And for me, it's not just the spread of COVID. There's the dreaded norovirus that hits every winter, and half the Western world goes down with it if you go to a conference. So I think really we should be looking at ways going forward of doing a lot more of this virtually and online, helping with our time and also helping with us to be able to do more. But also we need to manage not taking breaks and not doing everything 100 miles an hour and putting our boundaries in place. So I think that's me. So, and if anybody's got any questions at any point, just let me know. Okay, thank you.
That's brilliant, thank you, Janine. I picked up in the chat just asking about if people are using online forms, so we can maybe pick that up in the discussion, because I think it's often the bit that's not talked about, because it's not the particularly sexy bit of online service delivery. I don't know if there is a particularly sexy bit of online service delivery, but that back-end functionality and simple things like forms can just make such a huge difference once you get them right. So that's maybe something we can pick up for other participants that are in the room, like what forms and kind of onboarding stuff are you using with clients, and what does that process look like for you. Okay, cool. We're going to hear from Carmen from the Alliance now. And I'm hoping, and we've invited the Alliance along, really, I guess, to get a sense of that kind of bigger picture of what's going on across the sector. And the Alliance has got a lot of members from quite small volunteer-led community groups right up to some of the much bigger healthcare charities. So I thought it'd be good to get a sense of really what's going on.
Thanks, Ross, and thank you for doing part of my job for me and introducing the Alliance and who we are. So I'm a development officer in the Alliance. I've been there for the last 4 years, and I've mostly been focusing on digital health and care. However, I do work, in collaboration with a lot of my other development officer colleagues. So we do cover quite a wide range of programs. And all of our work aligns with our vision, which is for a Scotland where people of all ages who are disabled, living with long-term conditions or unpaid carers, have a strong voice and enjoy their right to live well, free from discrimination. So a lot of our work is focused on emphasizing that voice of lived experience and bringing people at the center of new development. And I suppose for the purpose of this session, as Ross said, we thought it would be good to highlight some of the ways that some of our own services have adapted, but mostly our members, how they have dealt with the situation. We do have almost 3,000 members, and they do range from individuals with long-term conditions, so a lot of people who are potentially in the shielding group, but also organizations small and large. And I think by their nature, the organizations that we work with do have a culture of putting people at the center because they are focused on certain health conditions or certain groups of people, so they are very good at engaging with people. And therefore, they have been quite successful in adapting to this new normal that we're living in now and that we have been living in for the last 12, 13 weeks. So they have managed to continue creating connections with the people that they support, making sure that the services have not been dropped or disrupted and that they continue to provide support. And I think we've seen quite a lot of our members, having to work with limited resources, having to put some stuff on furlough and having to change and do a lot of work. But I think at all times they've really focused on trying to disrupt services for the people accessing support as little as possible. But like I said, that doesn't mean that they haven't faced disruption themselves. And in some cases, they have had to do more with less. And I think that's a very significant challenge, as well as losing a lot of fundraising money and potentially facing financial uncertainty, I would say. But I do think because of this sort of new context where we're seeing a lot more restrictions and barriers in terms of what we can do and how we can do it, we've been seeing a lot more collaboration. And in order to highlight these examples of really good practice, we have launched a new series of stories called Community in Action. And that's our response to highlighting and supporting good practice happening across the sector. And these are really, really good stories of how organizations have adapted and changed the services, but also how they have seized new opportunities, which maybe they hadn't necessarily foreseen before. I've had conversations with multiple members where they have said that because they've had to change their services and move them to the online, they have seen a shift from focusing on geographical communities to communities of interest, which for some groups, for example, people living with autism or LGBT groups, for example, that has really helped strengthen connections between people because they are unlimited by where they are and they can really find like-minded people from across Scotland and from across the UK and connect in a much more meaningful way. And also for organizations that deal with specific conditions, this has been an opportunity to really reflect on how they support the people that they engage with and how, I suppose, the advice that they give is tailored to COVID-19 and what it might mean now. And so I got distracted by the chat, what this means now and also for the future as we move out. And even as restrictions lift, that doesn't mean that everything will just go back to normal and people will continue to face anxiety, even increased anxiety, because the virus is still a threat and everything's changed and the way we interact with each other. So I think there's been a lot of firefighting and working really hard to keep our heads above the water with limited capacity and limited resources. I think there are really great examples from across the community of how we can actually seize opportunities that this has, that this situation has sort of brought up. And I think we need to also be aware, and it's something that we campaign through our policy work quite a lot, that COVID-19 doesn't have the same impact on everyone, and that we do need to make sure that the responses are tailored and adapted to specific groups, including people with learning disabilities, women and unpaid carers. Everyone will have a very different experience of what the current situation sort of surfaces. And we've seen increased loneliness and uncertainty, like Janine mentioned, mental health pressures, and responses from communities we'll have to focus on what we can do now, but also what will be available in the future. And I would really encourage everyone to sort of have a look at the community in action series, because there's so much learning and you can access those resources. You know, you can just read a few articles or listen to a few podcasts. They show, I suppose, the range of responses from all across Scotland and how people have connected and they have changed their services, and whether people have used Zoom or WhatsApp or Facebook. I literally think everything has been tried, but there's still so much scope for trying new approaches and just seeing what works and being flexible. There are, of course, challenges around security that people have had to balance, you know, always having to think what the benefits are for the people we support, but also how do we keep them safe, and how do we make sure that staff is also comfortable with this change. I was saying earlier, like, I've been having so many technical difficulties since lockdown started, and it's just a continuous learning curve. And just because someone has digital in their job title, it doesn't mean that they know everything, and we can all continue to share all this learning and build new collaborations around this. In terms of what the Alliance has been doing, other than our campaigning work and our raising awareness work, we have two services that we do deliver. One of them is Alice, which is an online platform for finding support in your community. And as soon as COVID-19 sort of happened, they have changed one of their categories, so people can go online and find what support is available, either locally or nationally, in the COVID-19 category specifically. And also the Alliance manages a considerable number of community links practitioners who are based in deep end practices, GP practices across Glasgow. And they have had, because normally they would engage with people face to face, they have really had to be creative in how they support the people that they normally engage with. And again, it's not a matter of, even though I've been working in digital, like I said, for the last 4 years, I always think that I almost want to stop talking about digital. Like, digital should not be the topic. It's just a tool. It's just the way that we try to move towards outcomes. So they have been really creative on, you know, whether they phone people or whether they use WhatsApp, on how to support people on their terms, and almost just forgetting about this digital bit, because, I mean, it's important to talk about and the challenges, but only in the frame of what outcomes are we trying to achieve, what are people needing at the moment, and trying to, and I've noticed today there are so many good resources on how to find out what the people you work with really need and how to carry out those conversations, and almost take a service design approach towards changing your services, but almost forgetting about, you know, the method is just a method, and you can change it, and you can try and fail and try again, and eventually you'll get it right, as long as you're focused on the people and their outcomes.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Well, if I get loads of echo there, did anyone get that? Is that me? Maybe I'm coming through John's speaker. I don't know what happened there. I thought it was a really good point about focusing on the outcome and really going back to more of a service design approach. And actually, I think these last few weeks have kind of exposed how ridiculous it is that we saw in the past. Some of us saw digital services as a completely separate thing, or a kind of nice to have, or they sit separately. And face-to-face is this gold standard, and it's the constant default position. And now we're in a world where you can't do face-to-face. It's kind of exposed how ridiculous that concept is. And I think there's a really good point, actually, that was made by Janine about the fact that for a lot of the people that she's working with, digital is their first protocol. Digital's the way they want to access the service. It's not a second best, it's the way that they want to access it. So really going back to that core element of who are your users, how they're living their lives, what do they want from you, and these don't need to be two things in conflict. It shouldn't be face-to-face versus digital. It's about thinking about how do you design a service that's best fit for purpose for your users. And I think as well, like Jane touched on this, that like the sheer sunk cost of delivering face-to-face services for a lot of charities is astronomical. So even if you just take travel expenses or the rental that you need to pay for 4 premises to have that geographical spread across a local authority, We're talking tens, if not sometimes hundreds of thousands of pounds before you've even delivered the thing you want to deliver to someone. So we should be thinking, I think, as Carmen said, not starting from scratch, but really thinking about what does a service look like that's going to meet people's needs, and how do we make the most of the money that we've got when we're delivering that stuff. Okay, right, I'm going to pass you on to Alan Cowie now from Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland. Alan's muted. You're muted, Alan. We'll need to unmute you. There we go.
Not my fault.
I do that in every single Zoom call without fail. Doesn't matter how many I do. So.
I was mid-flow. You missed some really good stuff there. I'm not sure I can recreate it now. I think the themes that are brought by Janine and Carmen are I think resonate across the whole sector. I think what I'll do is just take you through Chest, Heart, Stroke Scotland, what we do, the kind of pre-COVID approach to how we develop and deliver services, the kind of cultural impact that lockdowns had on us, and maybe go back to that point that you were saying, Ross, about the perception that face-to-face is gold standard, default setting. And if I'm honest, it's probably something I held on to as someone who's been around the sector for a long, long time. But the world's changed, and I think increasingly we're changing with it. For people who don't know, Chest, Heart, Stroke Scotland is an organisation that at its very core seeks to ensure that people are supported to live with a stroke or heart disease or respiratory disease, and be supported to make an effective transition out of acute care back to home, make an effective recovery, and take as much control of their lives back as they can with the ongoing support of the charity. So a large part of what we do is that kind of initial physiological stabilisation through our nursing teams, either on the ground or through our advice line, and then kind of maintaining the momentum of recovery and helping deliver that the rehabilitation prescription by our community teams and their volunteers. And then in all of this, the ultimate aim is to enable people to have the confidence and resilience to take a bit of control of their life back. And whether we call that self-management or self-efficacy, whatever we call it, it's about making sure that people are in a place where they can manage the impact, the long-term impacts of their particular condition. And we seek to use our peer groups and lived experience as a kind of core component of that process. I think pre-COVID as an organisation, on reflection, probably if you asked me beforehand I would have said this, but on reflection, we were pretty analogue as an organisation. We have some very bright young people in our comms and marketing departments who use social media. It's just an integral and innate part of their job. But certainly, a kind of an old dog like me, who's responsible for the design and delivery of services, kind of had a focus that face-to-face was the thing that you did. It could be supported by other means, but by God, being in someone's house or having someone as part of a group or just being physically in front of someone was the way that you delivered a service which was around supporting people deal with the kind of the emotional impact of a life-limiting condition. I think my view has changed, if I'm honest with you, as a course, as a product of the past 3 months. And I'll come back to kind of the general pictures, but I start with some of the specific stuff as an example of how we've changed. A core component of what the charity does is to support a third of the people in this country who have a stroke every year. So there's about 5,000 people who have communication difficulties as a consequence of their stroke. And that affects their ability to talk, to read and to write. And that's normally, I guess, cut across two conditions. One's aphasia and one's dysarthria. And that's about both the ability to speak, to understand others, to read and write, but also the kind of physiology in speaking. And normally these two things go hand in hand. So people are faced with a particular challenge about how they communicate. And I think giving someone their voice back post-stroke is a huge thing to do and to be responsible for. Pre-COVID, I think our route to supporting people was through a series of one-to-ones, both reaching into the hospital as SLTs and other AHPs were making the prescription for recovery and rehabilitation, and the charity being part of the delivery of that, right through to doing one-to-one preparation, building people's confidence, and then when appropriate, bringing them into group formats where we would practice people's ability to speak, to write, to communicate. And that normally we normally delivered over a 12 to 16-week course, and then look to move people onto peer groups where they were supported by people with lived experience. But obviously people could then contact the charity as part of that ongoing process. And we developed things like aphasia cafes, so people were going after our kind of intensive interventions where they could support each other. When lockdown happened at the kind of the end of March, I guess as Director of Services, I had a considerable fear, I suppose, that how could we possibly deliver that communication support to people virtually, when at the heart of our ability to do so was that kind of human contact. I've been proven I'm almost 100% wrong by the work that our community teams and our volunteers have been doing on the ground. As at the end of March, we were in a position where in the space of a week, we took everything we did face-to-face and switched it to a digital platform. Both our helpline, which became a virtual call centre, expanding capacity and functionality, and also the work we were doing on the ground in our nursing teams, but in our community teams around aphasia. We switched everything we did on a face-to-face basis, whether it was in hospital, whether it was at home, or whether it was in community settings, to a digital media. And we've been using Microsoft Teams, we've been using Zoom, we've been using Skype, whatever suits the individuals that we're working with. And a large part of that is about ensuring people still have the ability to practice, have the tools and the resources to enable them to continue to take the rehabilitation prescription that was given by SLTs and to practice it with the support of volunteers and Chest Heart Stroke Scotland's team on the ground. We have, as a consequence, which used to be like a weekly group event, we're now doing it every couple of days because it's easy to do via Skype or whatever mechanism we're using. We're working with local museums and local government to utilise libraries and museums to use their understanding about local environments to facilitate people to remember their past and to tell stories as part of that communication process. So what we're doing with Glasgow Life is particularly good. So we're sending people quizzes out, we're sending video links out where they're understanding, this is where I grew up, this is what I remember. And that again becomes a bit of a prompt for someone then as part of the kind of recovery process to begin to tell their story, either verbally or through written communication. We're doing things like Word of the Week, where we're sharing words of the week, we're doing quizzes, we're doing questions of the day, we're prompting people. So the reach and the interaction has been exponential when we move from a face-to-face environment onto a virtual environment. And that, I guess, has been supported by a degree of connectivity we never had between our volunteers, our staff, and the people we're serving, because we're now in contact with them in a way we never were, because it was all about contact through a venue, a date and a time that was kind of dictated by people's availability and by the availability of venues we were using to do so. And we reflect that back on the broad messages I think that's given us as a charity in terms of where we're planning to go next. A big issue about connectivity, that quite the opposite of my fears about moving from face-to-face to a virtual environment, it's actually brought people closer. Our ability to speak to people, our ability to contact them, our ability to work closer with our volunteers, and our staff's ability to contact each other, where they're not driving between venues, or they're not driving to meet people. It's been a world of a difference. People are talking to each other more regularly and more in depth. I think one of the other big things that we've seen is this ability for us to think about how we capture data in a more effective way. So we're building an infrastructure that sits behind the contact piece to allow us to record in live time, you know, both the delivery of our specific outcomes or outputs for each intervention we deliver, and to record that live as we do so, but to ensure that it's held digitally rather than the series of paper-based then worksheet recording that we had in the past. Our reach has doubled in the first quarter of this year as opposed to where we were last year. And that's just about the reduction of travelling time. It's about the connectivity piece. It's about the ease of access to people. I think our approach to development and improvement has significantly changed. I think we have, as a consequence, recognised more opportunity to develop our services. We've certainly broadened them out. We are now working with colleagues in ICU and NHS Lothian and the university. We've developed this idea of tailored talks, which we're using curated information to create tailored information around a person's particular needs within their pathway at different points of the pathway. We're looking at opportunities to support people, not just as the Leaf Hospital, but reaching in to make sure that we are adding our value and our capacity as people make that transition between the event itself and preparing themselves for discharge back to home. And the one thing I have discovered, and I'm sure that it's echoed across all partners, the speed of decision making now is just phenomenal. What would have normally taken 3 months of conversations with colleagues in the NHS and local government is happening within days, if not sooner. I've got one particular example I won't tell, where we had a proposal and it was signed off in 20 minutes in a telephone call with some senior people in the NHS, which was great. And that service is up and running and doing extremely well. And the last big thing I think for us is about quality of experience. And while it's anecdotal just now because we are in the process of collecting data, I think like Janine and Cameron were saying, that there was a genuine fear that what would come out of this virtual requirement, because we couldn't meet people face to face, was a diminution in the quality of experience they were having in the way we deliver their services. And quite the opposite is true. To the point, I think, when we started this, everything in our planning was about how do we get back to normal? How do we get back to face to face? So we have in our interactions been speaking to people on a regular basis about how they were feeling about the virtual consultation interaction with us and what they felt about the future. And almost unanimously, it's been about how do we maintain this? How do we make sure that this is something that becomes a central plank to the way we deliver support and care for people moving forward? And perhaps the move back to face won't be as wide as perhaps we thought it might be 3 or 4 weeks ago, or even longer than that. Now, we are going through the process of analysing that to ensure that we are comfortable that a person's experience of our care isn't just about saying you're doing a good job, but helps shape the actual way we shape our services moving forward. I think from a cultural perspective, we have a lot of clinicians within the organisation, you would guess, nursing, EHP, whose training and professionalisation, I think, was all about that face-to-face contact, because that's the way we did business, have always done business. I think we've seen a significant cultural shift within the organisation with the professions who are responsible for shaping, delivering our services, that they now can see the absolute value of the delivery of care and support using the virtual media in a way perhaps we never had. You know, COVID has been an absolute blight on the world, never mind Scotland, but there's so many positives I think will come as a result of the lockdown and our drive to continue to deliver care and support for people, albeit in a different way.
That's brilliant, Alan. Thank you so much for that. That was really useful. Does anyone have any questions they want to jump in? There's a couple in chat, but I thought it'd be worthwhile just opening up to anyone who wants to come in on video. Or even for those of you who are not on video, you're still allowed to ask questions. That's perfectly fine. Any questions for Carmen, Alan, or Janine? John, any that you've spotted coming in through chat? Or any points that have been made?
We had a kind of practical question about people using digital document systems for getting consent. One system I've seen some organisations use is DocuSign, and another one is called Yoti. So there's a few different tools out there. Marina's just asked how Alan got everything online in a week, so that's maybe a good one to pass back because it is just very impressive.
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't about me. I sat at the centre of this and took some of the plaudits, but it was the guys on the ground. If I give you an example, we had a helpline, an old analogue telephone system, which our advice line nurses were using, and it was fine. It done the job. People would phone up and we'd call them back or whatever. And as COVID was developing, I was exploring the opportunities to switch that into the cloud in a virtual system. And we started the conversation probably 2 weeks before actual lockdown happened, and we closed our offices because our helpline facilities were very much based within our office facility. We had, at that point, agreed with an organisation who would deliver it for us, who would design and deliver it for us. We were due to start training on the Monday morning with the advice line nurses, and we closed the office at 12 o'clock. So the guys had 2 hours training. They then took their laptops home with them, and we went live the next day. So that was a significant challenge, and that was down to the professionalism of the guys who were quite happy to learn as we went. In terms of face-to-face services, the work of the community support team and our nursing teams on the ground was just amazing. They just took to it, created the infrastructure, the governance systems, all within a week, and started to deliver the support for people the following week. Yes, there were mistakes made. Yes, we tweaked as we went, but the reality was we couldn't stop delivering care. One, because it's who we are, and two, to be mercenary about it, we were being paid to do it. So we had commissioned relationships with NHS, so they expected us to do it as well. But it was amazing what we achieved over that 2-week period, both the switch in it and our professionals' ability to make that transition between doing things face-to-face and delivering in a structured way. We did go through that initial period of which mechanism would we use? Would you use Zoom? Would you use Skype? All those fears that people talked about the safety of Zoom was at the heart of it. We were using Near Me, which is an NHS-based system to help facilitate some of that. You know what? And we learned as we went, and we're still learning in what we're doing just now. But it's amazing what you can achieve when there are no other options.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really good question came in from Geraldine there, and I thought, Janine, this is maybe one that you might want to pick up if it's something that you've done. So Geraldine was asking about how you asked people which platforms they were using. So that the exact question was, has anyone developed a form or survey to ask people who access your services which platforms they use most, and inform which platforms you then choose to use to deliver things differently on? I don't know if did that come informally, Janine, or was that a kind of a formal consultation process with users, or what did that look like for your service?
Yeah, it's really on a person-centred point of view when you first start working with anybody, because they're all completely different. Some people, like I said, they don't even want to speak to somebody. They feel really intimidated by that. So they will say, like, we'll get somebody just come in the helpline, well, it was actually on our email address, and said, I can't even speak to somebody on the phone. Could I maybe just chat by email for a while? So we started off that way. And then other people will say, no, I want to go straight into using, I'm used to using Zoom. I've been using it with the family. I want to use that. And for other people, it's the telephone. But it's a really useful, it's very interesting, the point in terms of getting an evaluation about how that's worked for people. So it actually got my mind thinking in terms of, while we're asking up front, what's the best method to use? It might be really good afterwards to add that onto our evaluation forms to say, was that the best method for you? Is there something else that we could use that would be better? So I think that's really useful, that we maybe need to start evaluating how well that's working for people as well. I mean, just now what we use is we use our usual counselling tools, which is Core 10, which is a sort of counselling evaluation tool. So we're sort of getting some feedback on that, obviously, how well the platform that we've used has worked, because we're seeing if somebody has actually improved on those scores. And, you know, you can compare then who's received different types of support to see if there's been any difference in the level of improvement. But it would be really good on the service user questionnaire to say, were there any issues with that? For example, one of the ones that I never even thought of was I use WhatsApp with one of my clients, and it's on my phone because it's WhatsApp. She was getting a wee bit seasick through some of the calls because WhatsApp wobbles about a wee bit, whereas Zoom doesn't. But it was easier for her to use that. So things like that you don't realise you can sort of pick up as you're going on, and it would be good to record some of that stuff anecdotally at least to see how we could really do well going forward. Yeah,
no, that's great. Yeah, I think there's often been a thing, and particularly probably more pre-COVID, where people think we need to choose a platform and we need to stick to that, and that needs to be the platform where we deploy all of our services. But actually, just what you described is use the services that people are comfortable using. I think one of the session that we're having on Tuesday, which is specifically on kind of no-code solutions, so looking at using tools like Zapier and if this then that to tie different solutions together. And that should be a really interesting one for those of you who are interested in things like how do we get online forms and how do we get sign-off for people, and how does that then tie into a back-end system. That actually one of those principles that we've tried to get across through all these calls is using off-the-shelf products where possible, and off-the-shelf products that are going to talk to each other is a much better way of doing things, rather than trying to build some bespoke system. So like Alan's description of deploying something really quickly, that can't happen if you're going to take 6 months to build a CRM system. So we need to move out of that, I guess, that mindset where everything's about a giant, expensive, prolonged procurement system and making an assumption that the thing exists already. There might be some special exceptional cases, but 9 out of 10 cases, there doesn't need to be a bespoke system that's built to deliver the thing that you want to deliver. Right, I'm going to do a thing where I usually pick on, oh, Pat's going to come in. Pat, do you want to make a point? You need to unmute yourself as well, Pat.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's a question for Alan, because often meetings are very unproductive, and I wanted to ask him about the pace of decision making. Was that down to attitude shift or collaboration? Can you kind of give any comment on that?
Are you talking internally within the charity or decision making with their partners in other parts of the system?
With partners in general, decision making strategically in general, yeah.
Yeah, again, but I guess there's a similar experience to me. You know, I've been developing services in the NHS for 20 odd years, and you know what it can be like, the bureaucracy. I'm being very polite now.
I'm being polite as well.
I think that the situation has changed people's attitudes big time. You know, I had when I was talking about the conversation with a senior clinician and a director of nursing on a particular opportunity we were thinking about, and the conversation took 10 minutes, and it's now live. We'd done the work beforehand to prepare and present a proposition to make sure that it was safe. Obviously, reputation helps, people trust you. You know, all that goes a long way. But if we're talking about what we were at that time, how do we provide additional capacity and support for a system that was facing the prospect? This was done at the beginning when there was a prospect of a spike that never quite appeared. And that's down to the good graces and the work of the NHS. But there was a concern that community services might be inundated. And therefore, like all third sector organisations, we were exploring ways about how we could add capacity in a triage way to support a proportion of patients make that transition between hospital to home. So I think from that experience, and it isn't the only one, it was the quickest one. I think because of the crisis we're in, there's an acceptance that we just need to think slightly outside the box, and that perhaps all those concerns about how you work together was put to one side. One thing that has been a bugbear, and I'd rather be honest about this, is it's been a damn sight easier to agree changes to pathways, clinical pathways, or integration of a third sector in pathways, as it has been to agree data sharing agreements. Good God. If there's been a bugbear in anything we've been doing, it's not the fact that everyone wants to do it, it's getting everyone to be comfortable with the data sharing arrangements. Even if you've got one in place for another service, trying to get agreement for another one has been a particular challenge. Now, that's something we've learned over the coming weeks, the previous weeks, and now we're in a situation with one particular board where we think we might just have cracked it, and that now becomes a foundation piece for how we do it elsewhere. But trust me, that's been a painful lesson. And at the heart of that was about saying we were working with clinical teams, but what they were doing was raising awareness about this and getting patients to self-refer, rather than us being an integral part of the pathway, where it was a clinician-to-clinician referral, which, as you know, is damn sight easier and damn sight more solid, about making sure that trust is there between one nurse or one AHP to another, and patients and clients have passed between the two in that way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's fascinating.
You know, just listening to that, Alan, there might be someone at the Alliance or someone at SCVO who may well get in touch about the ability to share some of the lessons learned from that, because just what you've described is just an issue that's come up time and time again to any healthcare organisation I speak with. And you know, even if it was like 5 top tips on on how to do this, like the amount of people that would really
more
want to read that.
more than happy. There's no secret bullet in this. I think it's just perseverance.
Yeah, but I think there's a framework, and I work as a mediator, and I think there's a framework in there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Because when we talk about data and we get kind of bogged up in the technicalities of it all, but if you can't actually get a data sharing agreement, that stuff's all meaningless, really.
Needs pragmatism and shared outcomes.
Cool. Okay.
Thank
right.
you.
I'm gonna, Jason, I noticed you're here, right? So I'm really interested in the men's sheds generally, and I'm particularly interested because such a thing that's in. Oh, Jason's gone. He's turned his video off. Oh no, maybe I've scared him. I'm gonna persevere with this anyway. He's back, right? I'm really interested in the men's sheds because here's something that is such a physical space, and now this has all happened. And I'd be really interested to hear from you if there's been a digital shift in men's sheds and what that's looked like. And is there anything you're able to share around that?
Yeah, sure, Ross. Yeah, obviously the impact of men's sheds has been huge because the concept of social prescribing with the men is actually getting shoulder to shoulder and doing stuff and integrating and getting them out the house and getting together. So this has actually had the opposite effect, and in some cases really bad, because those guys have changed their lifestyle and had the good benefit of socialization again, and now it's almost like they've had it and now it's been taken away from them. So it's almost worse as such. So one of the impacts for us is really trying to convince him to stay at home and not open the sheds. Any little glimmer of hope, and we can see their mental health is, we can go back to the shed, we can go back to the shed. And we're like, no, guys, you absolutely can't. Most of the shedders at the moment in Scotland are the over sort of 55, 60 age group, so they're high risk. That's playing on their minds as well. Will we ever get back? So a big mental health impact right there. Some of those men are divorced or widowed. And what we saw before the men's sheds started in Scotland and when these men came in was to see eating behavior. So we've had some discussions with some of our members, and they have admitted that they've gone back to comfort eating, which is high sugar, high salt, and their fears around the whole fresh food thing, and can they get it and can they access it. So some of the shedders are doing amazing work. They've got 3D printers, and they've created up networks where they're printing face shields for our frontline workers, thousands of them. So they've created this whole network between their houses, dropping them off in gardens, picking them up in bags, going backwards and forwards, WhatsApping each other. I'm coming by now, jumping out the car. Phenomenal resilience from these guys across the country, helping all our people when there was no supplies. What we've also seen is, thanks to the sheds, that a lot of these older guys had no IT tech savvy, and they've actually got more confident by going to the shed, because computers and particularly 3D printers are big in the men's sheds. So the whole CAD system and IT stuff has become more prevalent in sheds. And so luckily these guys have smartphones now, and they've transferred those skills into the Zoom rooms. We've chosen Zoom rooms as the way to go. We're having some glitches. What we've done on the website, and I don't know if anybody can give me some feedback on this, we're on WordPress, and what we wanted to do, because we're a membership organization, we've created a Zoom room through WordPress that if you're a member and you can log in to our website, you can then directly access the Zoom room. So the firewall is actually our website and our membership in that way. What we found when Zoom 5 came on and they updated all the security stuff was if we wanted a mass amount of people coming into the Zoom room directly linking in through the website without having to have a front room or somebody try to let them in and all that kind of stuff, that hasn't proved too successful. So I don't know if anybody else out there digitally is doing something or trying to do something through WordPress like that, where you don't have to have passwords, but also you don't want to pass it out to all the public. So we're still working on that.
John, what's the name of the one that SCVO used to use, where you can literally just drop in? I can't remember the name of it. The video calling tool. So it's like a Scandinavian country. It was a startup. What's the name of it, where you can create rooms?
Was that Appear-In?
Appear-In, yeah. Does Appear-In still
I think
exist?
that's now been taken over by Whereby.
Ah, right, okay. Okay. Because it did have that functionality, Jason, where you could literally just set up a room and then people could drop into the room.
Okay.
So that's maybe worth looking at.
Whereby.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any others in the room have used that as a kind of more
Whereby.
drop-in
There we go.
model.
Thanks for that, Jen.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jen's just put a
cool.
link in.
That's
Cool.
helpful.
That was
And I
really
guess the
interesting
other,
to hear, Jason. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing that came up on a Scottish Community Alliance meeting today, thinking of clients going back, and I'm in the Northeast, they're in the Central Belt. Does anybody know whether if you have a face-to-face meeting with, say, 3 people in a room, but you also wanted people from around the country to be at that meeting, say, using Zoom, how do you do that?
So do you mean like as in, so there's a meeting in a physical space and then there's multiple people attending?
From around the country into that meeting, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like in terms of technically doing that, you just need a decent enough screen so that everyone can see who's in the meeting, but there's only 3 people, so it wouldn't actually need to be that big a screen. Some form of directional microphone. And then because it's only 3 people, but you've got your 2 meters apart, if you had a wide angle webcam would probably do it. The thing is you can buy fairly expensive like video conferencing equipment, like where you're getting in the thousands of pounds. Personally, I don't think it adds a huge amount. Like, so there's the one that Logitech does like a wide angle view, so you can get more people in it. I think it's called Logitech C920. And then there's, you can get on Amazon, on other online retailers, you get like kind of omnidirectional microphones, or basically round microphones that go in the middle of a conference table, and then it will pick up from various sources rather than picking up just from the one person speaking. Is anyone else, I mean, has anyone got a setup in their office that's not like a high-end 10 grand video conference setup, but it's a bit more DIY? Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Quite a good basic one is the Jabra 510. It's like a little donut-sized thing that can sit in the middle of a table and plugs into your USB, and that's quite good for making it easy to hear a group of speakers if you're at the other end of a call.
Fantastic. Because we were just sort of saying, you know, when we go back to business as usual, whatever that means, and as some of the previous speakers have said, the amount of time to travel, the amount of time on a bus, a train, whatever, and then renting of the rooms, etc., etc. But there is still benefit, I believe, of the face-to-face. As one guy said today, you know, I live alone, I'm working at home, and actually going to a meeting actually gets me out the house because I do work from home anyway, and I'd be going quietly mad if everything had to be on Zoom. So I think there's also that play between still doing the face-to-face when we can do that, but then extending it from what we've learned from the Zoom stuff now and collaborating the two together. I think that could work really well.
I've just put a link to the Jabra one that John mentioned in the chat there.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah, and I think, you know what, just, I mean, whether it's kind of actual physical equipment, but I think there's a lot more, I hate using the term DIY because it makes it sound as if it's crap, but there's more kind of playfulness and experimentation from charities over this period, where there's less fear of, God, digital means we need to go and buy a big thing, and there's some experts over there who will just do the thing for us, and there's more thinking, like what Carmen described, of like what do our users want, what does their service look like, and then we'll go and explore and find the tools that are going to help us do that, or we'll try 3 tools till we get to the point that we know the one that's really going to work for us. I think for me that goes back to like the kind of culture stuff that Alan and Janine spoke about as well, is like we need to have that culture in our organisation where people across the board are comfortable playing with technology and trying new things out and not being afraid to ditch things when they don't work, but rather than just kind of outsourcing that responsibility every time that you want to do something with digital. And I think we're seeing a big shift in terms of that as well. Okay, John, any final points from you? Because I'm conscious of time, so we're just slightly over 3.
No, I think you just said what I was about to say, which is I think that for me, whenever Alan was challenged on the how did he do it in a week question, that sense of that assumption that you can do it and that it will take a bit of trial and error, but you'll get there, but also balanced against how you secure trust with your key partners as well. So if you can get that, then that will enable you to try a lot of new things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, with that in mind, do try and join us on Tuesday if you can. So we're looking at no-code technology. So we're looking at what are the building blocks of the technologies that you can use. So Janine, for example, I think we've actually got someone talking about using online forms and how you tie that into back-end systems and how you can do that without doing any coding whatsoever, without any kind of technical experience. So we're exploring some of the ways that you can do that within your organisation. So if you go on the SCVO events page, you'll get the link to that one. It's Tuesday, I think 2 o'clock, isn't it, John? For that one, yeah, 2 o'clock on Tuesday. So thanks so much to our speakers. So we had Janine Rennie from Wellbeing Scotland, Carmen Papatou-Dutu from the Alliance, I probably got it wrong again, sorry, I'm sorry Carmen, and Alan Cowie from Chest, Heart and Stroke Scotland. It's a really useful session. I'm also Jason, sorry, I'm so sorry for picking on you, but I was really interested in terms of what the men's sheds were doing. It was really interesting to hear something that's such a physically based charity and how you're kind of moving online. Do join us next week. So we've got the one, as I said, on Tuesday, and we've got another event coming up next Thursday, but they're all on the SCVO events page. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and the sunshine. Well done making it here when it's so sunny outside.